it. They've gone from 15 and 16 to champions of college baseball.
Welcome to the 1,544 Miles to Omaha podcast, talking about the past, present, and future of Cal State Fullerton baseball.
3-2 pitch on Davis is a fastball hit to left and deep. Blazer doesn't even go back on it. It's that far out and gone. Looked like it went over the scoreboard. A home run by J.D. Davis.
0-2 swing and a miss, strike three. Cal State Fullerton is on to the College World Series.
Here's your host, Dave Lamb.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you for joining us on our very first Twitter space.
You got it. I've only ever done one before. This is a clever little thing Twitter has. I've done one before, but yeah, this is cool. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
You're absolutely welcome, and thanks for carving out the time. I know you've got about maybe 20 or possibly maximum of 30 minutes to go.
Yeah, 30 minutes. That's what I got. We got 30. We're good.
Perfect. All right, we're at 6:01, so we'll go in there, and we're going to experiment with this and try to actually, for those that can't listen live or listen to it on a replay via Twitter, we're going to try to be able to put it on the 1544 Miles to Omaha podcast, so anybody can catch it that way. So, kind of one of those things of making the sausage, and we'll see how it goes on our first one, and maybe the next ones will be much better. But anyway. Welcome in, Mike. Thanks for joining us and spending the time. So we'll just jump right into it because I know we got some limited time. In January, this is one of the reasons why it inspired us to reach out to you, is in January, you did a podcast with obviously the D1Baseball crew, and you did it on teams that are ready to do a 180 in 2023, especially doing it like a fantasy baseball or fantasy football style draft, selecting teams from Power 5 conferences and then wild cards from any of the conferences. And the premise was to consider the team's record from last year and then to compare it to the improvement expected for the 2023 season. And more like a stock trader who would buy low and then sell high. So that was kind of the concept of it. And you and Aaron Fitt and Kendall Rogers did this draft thing. But with your first wildcard selection, you chose the Cal State Fullerton Titans. So why are you so bullish on the Titans to make a large turnaround from their 22 and 33 record from last year?
Yeah, so I'd say the record last year is part of why I picked Fullerton. Obviously it's a really unusual record for them. I think this year's team, I just think they're considerably better than 22 and 33. And I think, just from a high level, I love how old Fullerton's team is. I really believe in this coaching staff. So I feel like, the longer they're there, the more they'll have the program headed in a good direction. So, it's an old position player group. It's, there's actually experience and age on the pitching staff too. I think I'm probably a little bit more confident in the position player group than I am the pitching. And I think the other thing is I don't see a dominant team in the Big West. Santa Barbara is very talented and they're the program that's on a roll, but they're kind of resetting a little bit this year. They're going to have significant turnover and play some young players. That doesn't mean they won't be very, very good, but Long Beach had a lot of turnover. Irvine is, that last year was not not as good of a year as 2 years ago for them, obviously. Cal Poly's, breaking in a brand new coaching staff outside of Larry Lee. So yeah, I think that I think the bottom of the Big West is very gettable for Fullerton. So yeah, sorry about the long answer, but I'm bullish. I think this will be this is certainly not a Fullerton team like the aughts of the 2000s, but it's I think they're certainly better than 22 wins.
So not to put you on the spot here, Roons, but would you say 30 wins is gettable? Because that would just be an improvement about 8 wins from 22 wins last year to about 30 wins. That would be a +8. Do you think that's reasonable, or where would you project?
Yeah, I think very reasonable. Now, That said, I have not looked at Fullerton's non-conference schedule, and they typically do play a really rough non-conference schedule. So hopefully, I'm not in error there. But I just don't see Fullerton as, they were 12-15 in the Big West last year. Like I just don't see them under 500 in the Big West, and I don't see them under 500 as just in general. So obviously playing Stanford's going to be difficult. I think that's the best roster on the West Coast, but Michigan is kind of resetting and a new coaching staff. I think Texas is not as strong as they've been the last couple of years. I think Fullerton is probably better on paper than Pepperdine, and then you get into your conference season. So yeah, I think Fullerton was basically under 500 in the league and under 500 in non-conference. I actually think they'll be better than 500 in both, by both metrics.
I was just about to ask you, but it looks like you had the schedule pulled up because you just went, weekend by weekend, Stanford, Michigan, Texas. They've got a few midweek non-conferences thrown in there with Tulane and University of Southern California and then Utah before they hit the road and go to Pepperdine to finish out that non-conference preseason, if you will. But then there's also that tough non-conference that's smack in the middle of, because the Big West has those bye weeks that are built in. It just kind of coincidentally coincided with the fact that TCU and Kirk Saarloos' bunch out there in Fort Worth, their schedule allowed for the Titans to be able to come out there to Fort Worth and be able to play. So thoughts on that breakup of the Big West schedule and then having a little bit of TCU and Fort Worth action in the middle there. So
yeah.
They might be a little bit battle tested.
Yeah, so I would say the college baseball fan in me loves that series. The person that bet the over on Fullerton does not love that series. That's TCU is really good. We know that. Obviously, Kirk Saarloos is, a star in college baseball coaching. And so that will be difficult to play TCU. I'm just not a fan of that, where the leagues have these breaks right in the middle, and then you play these odd. The coaches are kind of caught between a rock and a hard place there because, it's the weekend of May 5th. You don't get to choose who you play that weekend necessarily. I mean, there's only so many teams that aren't playing a conference series, and then you mix in finals and those types of things. So that is a bummer. Like, that will be difficult. But all that said, there's a lot to like about Fullerton's team. And, I think if they go to TCU and don't get swept, that's still, my wager is still in pretty good shape.
Well, you mentioned earlier that you're bullish on the Titans because you really believe in the coaching staff. Can you expand on that a little bit more about Coach Dietrich, Belo, and Neil Walton?
Yeah, so I would say, if you think about it, Jason Dietrich is so highly regarded, and I think one of the areas where Fullerton has really struggled is on the mound. And, this is not to cast shade in any direction, but there's just been so much turnover in, as far as the pitching has gone. And so, some of the best pitching Titan teams have been under Dietz. And so I think he's going to grow into being a very good head coach. And I like that he's continuing to work with the pitchers, so that, that's awesome. And again, I like that this coaching staff has got deep ties to the program. And, I think very highly of Neil Walton, and, you mentioned Josh and Jake Pavletich and, Connor Spencer. I mean, these guys are, these are Titans. And so I think they're going to settle in. I think it's going to be they're going to do a good job. I think they have a really good feel for what works for Cal State Fullerton from a recruiting perspective and what doesn't. Now, certainly recruiting has changed, immeasurably over the last 10, 15 years. But yeah, I like this group. I think it's, the one thing I never thought of is when there was a lot of turnover at pitching coach for Fullerton, the thing that I thought about was, hey, that's probably pretty hard on the pitchers when there's a new pitching coach every year. But someone pointed out to me that, that is a real thing. But the other thing it really hurts is it kills recruiting of pitchers, because, that's something that opponents can use against the program very easily, that, hey, like, yeah, sure, you can go there, but do you even know who your pitching coach is going to be? And so I think the drastic drop off in the pitching talent for Cal State Fullerton, it's never one thing, but that certainly didn't help. And I think, this coaching staff and Dietz in particular settles that, kind of puts that to bed, and now you can start to recruit the quality arms that you want.
The fact that now that the volunteer assistant is now going to be transitioning into being that fourth assistant and all that other kind of stuff, and you're going to be able to have more latitude when it comes to recruiting with the addition of that coach. You bring up a good point in the fact that the consistency of recruiting pitchers. Are you a fan of the head coach also being the pitching coach, much like Kirk Saarloos, much like Jason Dietrich, where you're the head man and you're handling the pitchers? So it's kind of like a, two birds with one stone coaching, or, what is there an ideal when it comes to putting together the college staff that it really doesn't matter who the head man is, as long as you got good staff around you?
Well, I would say it's a good question. Like, in theory, I'm not a fan of it. But then you start looking around, just because I think the head coach has so many responsibilities. It's almost this. The head coach is the CEO of the program, and it's almost like it'd be like a business having someone be the CEO and VP of sales at the same time, and you're kind of like, man, that's two really important roles in this with the same person. Now, that said, I mean, it would take us 5 seconds to point out elite college baseball programs where the head coach is the pitching coach. UCLA, John Savage. Florida, Kevin O'Sullivan. You mentioned Los at TCU. Obviously that's more unproven, but just Savage and John Savage and Kevin O'Sullivan, you could stop right there, right? I mean, that's two coaches with national championships, and we could keep naming coaches in that regard. So I think at the end of the day, when it comes to putting a coaching staff together, you get the right people on the bus, and then you figure out who's sitting where later. And that does seem like that's what Dietz has done, is he's been very deliberate in who he's hired, and it does, from the outside, it makes a lot of sense to me.
Well, going back to this year's group of Titans that are going to be taking the field here in about, 48 hours, actually less than 48 hours from right now. You did the fall report on the Titans when they scrimmaged UNLV. What were some of the big takeaways? And I know a few months have passed, but what were some of the big takeaways that you saw that stuck with you now that a little bit of time has passed between now and then?
Yeah, I think the one thing that jumped out is what I said earlier, that just, it's a team that's got older players. Now, this is a really weird thing to say about Cal State Fullerton, but one of the challenges with that is that these players have struggled. It's just been an unusual number of losses for Cal State Fullerton in the last several years. So, but I still think in spite of that, these are good players that have been through the battles of college baseball, and I think that will pay dividends. I think especially when you look on the pitching staff, Tyler Stoltz is a 24-year-old. This is a 6th-year senior. The Finn Chester kid, same thing, 24-year-old. So, I mean, these kids are going to have a maturity. They're going to have a skill level. I think that really stands out to me. When I saw them in the fall, Nate Nankiel he just looks very confident. He's really an interesting player. He's a little bit of an awkward athlete when I saw him, but it all works. And he was just so confident and so aggressive that, he was sitting leadoff, which was interesting. But I saw him hit a home run. I saw him steal bases. I mean, it was really, really remarkable. He played first base and center field, which is a really weird combination, but kind of fun at the same time. I love Zach Liu. Zach Liu is one of my favorite college baseball players. They had him hitting 3-hole, and he's not a big kid, and I love that. He's just he reminds me. He's the player on this team that reminds me the most of the old school Titans. So Caden Connor obviously is an accomplished hitter. Brendan Bobo is kind of a nice lottery ticket where if he makes enough contact, he could really do some damage. Now that's a big if, but the power is undeniable. And Colby Wallace, a kid they're really high on, and certainly looks the part. That's a big-bodied kid, left-handed hitter. So yeah, I think I like the experience level of the team. I like Chester and Stoltz as kind of like leading that pitching staff. I really like Jason Blood. I was surprised to see him listed as a reliever and not a starter, but those roles will work themselves out, and maybe that is the perfect spot for him. But I came away really enjoying Zach Liu. He was really fun for me.
And you hit on, with guys like Brendan Bobo and Nate Nankill, their power is really, really something special to watch. I mean, if any of the coaches are listening or listen to this on the replay, I would encourage them to be in the same BP flight. That way you could definitely come in early from the tailgate, watch those guys, launch a few bombs, and then go back and have a few Frosties, and then go in and come back inside and enjoy the game. But when it comes to the pitchers, I think one of the big battles, and I wrote this up in our preview on the pitchers, is the transfer from Pepperdine, Trevor Hinkle, who is in a battle for Friday or Saturday night. It's either going to be Stoltz or Hinkle or Stoltz. Do you have any thoughts on him, the Pepperdine transfer, Trevor Hinkle?
Yeah, I mean, I would say I didn't get a great look at him. The day I saw him in the fall was, I would say, a very average day for him. Quite honestly, he looked more like a reliever that day than a weekend starter. Now, that said, he's got some track record. He threw a lot of innings for Pepperdine. I guess he was not a dominant arm in the WCC, and now the Big West, in theory, is a step up in class from there. But what I see in Hinkle is, hey, there's an experienced arm that knows how to, kind of get himself out of some pickles. And, that kind of slider cutter thing he's got going was a really interesting pitch. It was not a great day. Like, he did not have a great version of that the day I saw him in the fall. So, hey, like, if Hinkle has pitched well enough, I mean, certainly I'm not going to question Jason Dietrich. If he thinks Hinkle's a starter, then I'm in. And, if that moves Jason Blood to the bullpen, who I did see very good, then, by all means, that's awesome. I think, like, as far as who's the starter, like, who's the Friday night starter, if I was Dietz, I would go with Stoltz, just because, he's the older player. He's the kind of blood and guts guy. Like, Stoltz is not beating people on stuff. He's beating people on just skill and guile and confidence and competitiveness. And to me, like, that's what a Friday night guy is. And maybe Trevor Hinkle is that too. I'm not as familiar with him. But if you're making me make the call tonight, I would go Stoltz, just because I think he's not new. I'd be shocked if that team doesn't really believe in Tyler Stoltz. So, assuming that, that would be a no-brainer to me.
And this is just in college baseball in general, but the Titans kind of have this, I guess it's a good problem to have, are you a big fan of, righty on Friday night, lefty on Saturday night, come back with a righty on Sunday, or try to kind of get everybody in that rocking chair with having different ones? Or it really doesn't matter? If the guy is a standout lefty, you start him on Friday night no matter what. I mean, is there any thought process to that if you were in the coaching chair?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's if you have the right pieces, it makes a lot of sense, but it is a little bit of a luxury. It's kind of like, it reminds me of playing pool, where, should I be thinking about where I leave the cue ball? Yes, but not at the expense of missing the shot in front of me. And I think of it that way. I love a Friday night guy that sets a great tone for the weekend. But then, I've seen coaches say that, hey, what if you don't have that Friday night guy? Then maybe you put your best arm on Saturday and try and save the bullpen. So I think the pieces do have to fit together. But I've always been of the school that I want to be more focused on my team and how my team reacts to my rotation than, trying to have the other hitters on pins and needles and those types of things. So, yeah, I don't know. I always think of it more, it's more about my team than it is about the opponents.
Well, we mentioned Friday night starter a lot, and obviously I've listened to a number of the podcasts that you've done, and a number of times you've mentioned what I consider to be the ultimate Friday night starter is Thomas Eshelman being one of your favorite baseball players and pitchers of all time, and the fact that he's got the mind-boggling stat of he won 28 games but only walked 18 in his career or something like
Crazy,
that.
yeah.
I don't
more wins than walks. Yeah, that's exactly right. More wins than walks. It was like 28 wins and 18 walks in his 3 years. It's crazy.
Yeah, something absolutely mind-boggling. So in today's day and age, when it comes to radar guns and TrackMan and Rapsodo and all the measurables and analytics and all those other kinds of things where you can see launch angle and exit velocity, spin rate, all that kind of stuff. Do you find there's a lost art of just changing speeds and getting guys off balance and being able to pitch that, not blowing you away with the radar gun, but actually just, having a good fastball, but then having an even better curveball, changeup, slider combination or something like that. Do you see that's the way, or is that a dying breed in today's day and age of college baseball?
Yeah, I don't think you see it as much as we used to see it. Kids just train differently in pitching, and I don't think any of those tools like Rapsodo or TrackMan or any, like, those things are not bad by definition, but they're like anything else. It's like they, in a lot of ways, it's just, are you using them properly, that type of thing. I still think hitters are, they're susceptible to many of the same things. It's about upsetting their timing. It's about getting them uncomfortable. It's about not letting them, not letting hitters have certainty, those types of things. So, but I do think that the Thomas Eshelman is such a hybrid or such a unicorn, I should say, in that, like, he was like a high school catcher, right? And so it's his story is so unique. But I mean, like, give me the strike throwers though. I just think your team reacts well to those guys, and the people that change speeds and command their fastball. You don't see it as much anymore. That bums me out a little bit, but at the same time, I still think, no one could convince me that Thomas Eshelman couldn't be a dominant college pitcher in 2023 the same way he was a dominant college pitcher in 2013. I think the same stuff applies. And what's interesting is, I think if the metrics were more prevalent back then, we would have learned that Thomas Eshelman had some pretty special metrics. Some of those things that, for whatever reason, hitters just didn't see the ball that great. And so, anyway, long story short, you're right. He's one of my all-time favorites.
Special guy, and now he's a pitching coach with the San Diego Padres organization.
Oh, that's awesome.
Back home. I know we're coming up close to your heart out, but I did want to ask you this one. And this is specific to Cal State Fullerton, but also kind of overall for college baseball as well. But I wanted to get your thoughts on how the transfer portal and the expansion of the name, image, likeness will affect mid-major schools, and what does that mean for traditional college baseball schools, much like Cal State Fullerton? How do they stay competitive with the big Power 5 schools are able to poach somebody through through an NIL offer or through the transfer portal? Yeah,
I mean, I think it's tricky. It's, I don't think that, for the challenge is, if you look at the SEC right now, if my math is right, the SEC has 5 starting shortstops that went to high school in California. And that doesn't even include Jacob Wilson at Grand Canyon. So, I think that's a real problem for the Big West, powerhouses like Fullerton, Long Beach, Irvine, Santa Barbara, is the California kids, the best players, for Cal Poly 2 are often leaving. But I would say that, there is an opportunity for the Fullertons of the world where I don't see NIL. Like, there are very few instances where college baseball players are being just flat out purchased through NIL. There's a couple of them, but what I see is that schools are using NIL to supplement scholarships. And so, if a program like Fullerton, which has always been, a really strong program for fundraising, if they can fundraise NIL such that instead of 11.7 scholarships, now you've got 16 or 17 scholarships, maybe there's something there. And the other thing about all these kids going to the SEC is that these SEC schools can only put 9 people on the field. And kids want to play because they want to get drafted and they want to be big leaguers. And so I think the portal is a two-way street. I think about a kid, obviously Thatcher Hurd and Paul Skeens and Tommy White going to LSU, Maui Ahuna going to Tennessee. Like, we know those famous stories, but those kids are the exceptions. I think of a kid like Josh Hatcher, who was kind of an in and out of the lineup kid at Mississippi State, and then he goes to Kennesaw State last year, and he's a borderline All-American. So, and back in the day, Fullerton was pretty good at acquiring transfers. It's still a school in Orange County, California, with great facilities, and just there's a lot to offer there. So, I don't think the portal is like the only way to go, but I think it's I think Fullerton will run into some good players, maybe some older kids that have tried some other things and are ready to come home and be more assured of playing time.
Right. I mean, guys like Jack Haley went to University of Oregon. He's an Orange County guy. He's now back, came back last year. And then, yeah, you're right. It is a two-way street in the fact that when I had a conversation with Jason Dietrich, he said that we got 2 transfers from San Diego State, Ryan Falks and JoJo Ingracia. You mentioned Kobe Wallace earlier. He's coming from a Power 5 school in Washington. Trevor Hinkle we hit on. He's coming over from Pepperdine. So it is a two-way street. It isn't just one-way traffic coming out of mid-majors and only going to Power 5. So it is one of those things. So just the last couple of minutes here before we let you go. You're out there in Arizona. You're probably going to be at the MLB4 tournament out there in Talking Stick in Scottsdale.
Yeah, so I'll have I actually, for my day job, I took Friday and Monday off. So, it's going to be so great. I'm going to see, Grand Canyon's got a really nice team this year. So Grand Canyon, I'll see them play UC San Diego on Friday. Then it's Arizona versus Tennessee Friday night. Then Saturday, I'm going to go see Arizona State and San Diego State. And then I'll see Grand Canyon will host Tennessee on Saturday night. And then I'm going to go out to surprise Sunday and Monday. And that's Santa Barbara, Oregon State, Minnesota, and New Mexico. So, yeah, definitely fired up. It's going to be college baseball bonanza.
Yeah, it's going to be an overdose, let me tell you. Well, this has been fantastic. Sorry for a few of the hiccups in trying to get this going for the inaugural Twitter space, and then also we're going to be able to put this on the 1544 Miles to Omaha podcast. But thank you so much, Mike. So much for taking your time out, and then enjoy college baseball opening day. We've got less than 48 hours for you, but I know the Titans are going to start at 6 p.m., so we're less than 48 hours away for first pitch against Stanford.
Love it. Yeah, keep up the good work and enjoy the season. Good luck to the Titans. Gotta love. Hey, college baseball is better when the Titans are legit.
Thanks for listening to the 1544 Miles to Omaha podcast. Feel free to visit our website, CalStateOmaha.com. While there, you can order an official Cal State Omaha t-shirt from the merch store. Want to help others find this podcast? Please add a 5-star review wherever you are listening. It really does help. The 1544 Miles to Omaha podcast is an On the Lam Enterprises production and is not affiliated with Cal State Fullerton or Titan Baseball.